In the talk, we will discuss how to pick the right test automation solution smartly based on requirements, research, and evaluation. And we'll discuss each phase of this process. We'll talk about the different mistakes that people make, and in the end, you'll be able to use this presented assessment framework to find the right test automation solution. Not only for frameworks, but you will be able to use it for any kind of technical tool or solution. Here you can find some of my information, but you know who I am. In the end, so here is our agenda. First, we will discuss, actually what is the problem, what is the usual approach. Then we'll discuss the assessment system, and I will give you some considerations and tips. In the end, we will be able to answer the following questions. Are there any solutions that meet the requirement? Basically, how many we'll be able to define and find the different solutions and define the criteria how to compare them. You will be able to answer how much will it cost to implement particular solution. You'll be able to answer how much customization is needed to fit the solution to fit our needs, how much time is required, how much it will cost, and who will make the final call, because this is especially important. So what is the problem? Many companies at some point decide to start automating their QA activities, and if they had some, or for some new projects, want to establish test automation from scratch. So they have to pick the right tool, solution, framework, whatever word you want to use for that. And this talk will be about how to approach the problem, select the tools to evaluate or the frameworks, compare them, and decide which is best. So what is the usual approach? From my professional experience as a consultant, many companies make poor decisions at this particular step, which is one of the most important ones. Many of them have only manual QAs. The usual approach is to assign this process to the most senior of them, who may have only basic programming experience or almost zero experience with test automation. Or another usual practice is to practices the transfer of one junior regular developer to help with the effort. The problem is that none of these roles have the actual expertise to decide which is the best solution, nor have the experience to predict and estimate the cost of creating your solution or customizing an existing one. And usually there is this huge conflict of interests, because these roles typically prefer to create their own thing, not taking into account the actual cost, because they want to learn and get better during this time. And usually it's hard for managers to see this conflict of interests because they don't have the experience with such solutions or testing in general. A couple of months ago, and actually this happens quite a lot, I consulted a company with many QAs. Actually, they didn't have any QA lead or architect, and they didn't have any automation until now. So they wanted for me to train them and help them to write proper automated tests and probably evaluate and check whether they have picked the right solution. It turned out that they assigned one developer that didn't have any experience with test automation to handle the job. So he spent a few days reading blog posts, indirectly picked one of the suggested tools without really further researching or evaluating different options. It took him a week or two to automate a few test scenarios to their system. So when I joined, I showed them that this particular system, we use it to evaluate the different solutions. And we picked another tool. So yeah, let's get started. Now we're going to discuss the system. First, you need to create a list of requirements that you want to, for the things that you want to achieve, right? For example, automate the login, create accounts, submitting tickets, run the test nightly, and so on. So there are a few ways how you can gather these requirements. Probably, I will suggest to use team brainstorming. Get together with your developers, managers, all the people from your team, especially if you're a small Scrum team, right? You can ask another division for help. For example, if they already have automation, you can ask some of their QA architects, or if they're more senior people with experience with this, you can ask them to help you. You can hire a consultant, of course. This is a good option as well. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. He can just help you with such a system or whatever and guide the process. And also you can always ask stakeholders, perform the so-called stakeholders interviews to see from their perspective what they need, what they want. Just remember that stakeholders, because they're business owners, often don't have the technical expertise or don't completely understand the testing process and needs. Next, phase 2. You need to pick the so-called hard requirements and ignore for now the nice to have stuff, right? Based on your hard requirements, the solution for sure should have, these are basically the stuff that will help you to filter some of the frameworks and tools. And you need to pick only 3 to 5 most serious candidates that you are going to further research, right? And these will be the solutions that we will further use for creating proof of concept and do the assessment. In the next slide, I will talk about what are these typical hard requirements. Again, if you don't know how to define these requirements, you can ask LinkedIn, some user groups. For example, here in Bulgaria, we have this QA, really huge QA community, Facebook. Also, you can search in the search engine, test automation framework, web, C#, Java, whatever language you use, right? There are many discussions on Stack Overflow as well. So these are just a few ideas. So what is my list of hard requirements? You can, of course, none of these lists that I'm going to talk about, it's not predefined. You can add to it, remove some stuff, right? This is just an example. So some hard requirements, for example, automating web to be open source, to be free or no upfront licensing costs, to have community support. This is important because there are many open source solutions or free ones that are like not updated for a few years, right? So it's good to have frequent updates and community support, someone who, quickly to be able to answer or help you in case you're stuck. If it's open source, it's essential to have basic documentation and tutorials, because if you don't have a paid support, you'll have to implement many of the stuff yourself, right? So maybe these are the top 6 hard requirements. Next, the next phase is to define criteria which you use to compare the solutions. Since all of them are more or less subjective, we will provide a rating from 1 to 5 for each of them. And in a minute, I will show you an example, but let's first discuss them, right? And as I said, this is just an example. You can put whatever you believe is important for you here. For example, for me, usually, if we're talking about test automation, is the solution to be programmatic, not to use AI or to be a UI tool, right? So here are a few examples to be able to, is it capable of automating web? In certain points, if you have mobile applications as well, you want to use the same solution to automate your mobile apps, right? For example, many often right now, many people are, rewriting their existing web apps front ends to use React or Angular. So it's good to have this in mind. The future, even if the current front end is using older technologies. Again, good documentation. As I said, since all of these assessment criteria are subjective, you will see later on that how we'll handle this problem. For me, good documentation is one thing. For you, it will be something different, but we'll handle this problem a little bit later during the process. For now, just let's list all of the assessment criteria, right? Then it's especially important if you plan to have lots of tests to be able to run them in parallel, right? Many often, at least just to be capable to have this capability, right? Like in MS test unit to have, for example, if you use Cypress, no matter, just to be able from test infrastructure perspective to be able to do that. There are many other things, how you write the test and what is the system, whether it's capable to support parallel execution, but this is totally another topic. Right now, we are focusing only on the capabilities of the solution. Next, easy test creation. Again, this is a little bit subjective, but how easy is to create a new test? And this criteria, we will rate it later on during the evaluation process and while we were working on the proof of concept. And every one of the team will be able to create a test and then from his or her perspective, give the proper rating. Because again, depending on your level, for example, for one senior, it might be quite easy to create a test, but for junior, it might be really hard, right? Then testability. This is especially important for frameworks, right? You don't want flaky tests. Test readability. Most of the time, as you know, as programmers, most of the time we are reading codes, and as test automation engineers, half of the time we are reading tests that were written by somebody else. So it's important the test to be readable and clear what they are doing. Another important aspect is failures troubleshooting. It's not just to write the test fast. As you know, if you have experience in this, like we're spending many hours troubleshooting and trying to figure out whether it's a problem of the test or it's a real problem, right? So it's really important to have this failure troubleshooting analysis. Walks, screenshots, videos, and other stuff, right? I think this is a really basic one, but if we are talking about coded solution, you need to have an integration with source control, right? I think nowadays most of the tools are supporting this, but I listed here because there are some UI tools that still they have their own source control or whatever, but they're not well integrated with Git, for example, or Azure. Easy continuous execution. What do I mean by easy continuous integration execution? Maybe it's a good thing to be able to integrate it well with different continuous integration platforms and stacks. Not only support one of them, right? Because many companies have, for example, one company is using Jenkins, another Azure, another something else, right? Bamboo. So it's good, this tool, to be able to be put in custom pipelines and be able to support the native reports of these different technical stacks. I'm mentioning it here again because there are some fancy UI tools that they have their own runners, portals, whatever. I prefer everything to be in a single platform. Again, this is not always possible, but I'm striving for that. And this leads us to the next step, reporting tool support. Why this is important? Because, as I said, it's not just to be able to run tests, to have many tests or to run them really fast. It's important to be able to show the results, to be able to clearly see what are the exceptions, etc., to be able to present great reports to your management. There are many open source and free tools like Portal, Allure, and others. They're really pretty well integrated in continuous integration, so it's a good thing, your solution, to support them if it doesn't have its own capability of generating reports. Maybe at some point, if it's a free tool, there are such tools that are open source and free, but they also offer paid support and consulting. Maybe this is not a bad option. I mean, it's a good thing to have it, right? Because if you're stuck, you have the option to ask someone and to help you fast. Maybe the next two are a little bit similar, but is it possible to extend the framework or the solution? Because many often, in especially big enterprise projects, this is really essential and important. And how much time do you need? Do you need to hire a consultant to do it, or you can do it reading the documentation? Many often this is like a hidden thing. Probably these tools won't have enough documentation for this process. And for example, I'll give you an example. XUnit. I was recently doing videos for XUnit, and I figured out that it's really hard to extend this framework, right? It was completely lacking of documentation. They don't have this paid option, right? But still, if you want to extend it, it was extremely hard. There were almost no articles about it or any type of documentation or videos. So sometimes this is on purpose for some vendors to say they're supportive of consulting. In XUnit case, this is not the case, but I'm just giving an example for a tool that was lacking of documentation. Anyway, also you need to figure out how much time is required to do it. Your time is money, so it's important to figure this out. And how easy is how fast you can learn it, or anyone from your team. This is important. And some bonus criteria that sometimes I have in mind. Is this tool, especially if it's coded, does it have some kind of code conventions? It's good for, right now we're working on a new project with one of my teams, and I have constantly to do PR reviews, right? And at least in C#, this is possible in Java as well. We have installed this additional tooling for checking the code and giving warnings about some basic stuff in the code, instead of wasting time writing comments all the time and giving feedback. So code conventions are something really cool. Another important thing for me is that many often in these big projects, we have different environments. We have local environment, dev environment, QA environment, staging environment, production. It depends on the context, but we have different application environments, and we want to reuse the tests, right? But on different environments, we have different users, different passwords, different data, right? And you want to be able to configure through some kind of a configuration, whether this is JSON or something else. You want your test to be able to respect that and not hard code this data directly in the tests. Maybe again, depending on the context, whether it's web or mobile, maybe responsive testing will be important for you. So there are certain framework or tooling capabilities that support natively responsive testing. For example, it might be important for you, these tools, to be able to integrate well with cloud providers like Sauce Labs, BrowserStack, Lambda Test, right? Then for big enterprises, it's more and more important to have good capabilities about secrets management, not only putting them into environmental variables, but also using these cloud key vaults, right? There are some modern frameworks and tools that support that and integrate better and better with Amazon or Azure clouds. And maybe there may be custom requirements about specific tools integrations. For example, you may want your framework to be integrated with Jira or test case management system. This is a valid integration, and some coded solution offer that. And usually for me, it's important. It's not essential, but if you can do it, it's better. Your system under test to use the same technology stack as your tests, right? Why this is needed? Because if this is the case, your team, your developers can help you if you're stuck on something programmatic, right? And you can ask them. Now, phase 4 is to help you to implement a proof of concept. First, you need to form a working group. Of course, this needs to be technical experts, mainly the people who will be responsible for writing the tests. I will say all of them should implement 2-3 tests using the different solutions, but maybe one of them can do it. But at least all of them should be familiar with the different proof of concepts and try to fill the solution, right? Then maybe one of the most important phases is phase 5, where we create, each participant is filling this a table like this, where from the left, for the criteria column, we have all of the different assessment criteria that you choose, and we have a column for each particular solution. And again, as I said, you can put ratings from 1 to 5. 5 is really good. 1 is worse. And then you put your subjective rating about it. You can further extend the rating phase by prioritizing the different criteria and provide the so-called weight index for them. For example, for me, good documentation is a little bit more important than troubleshooting. So we are multiplying by this weight index. For example, if I put there 4, I'm multiplying it by 1.5, and the real rating afterwards is 6. And afterwards, at the end, you have average for the particular solution. After that, in phase 6, each person from the working group should provide their ratings based on the proof of concept. And then, as you can see, we're basically again averaging the ratings for a particular solution based on the ratings for each particular participant. Again, I prefer to extend a little bit the proposed table based on the experience, seniority, authority role of the participants. Of course, the QA architect should have bigger word in what we're going to use. Of course, if you want to achieve a democracy, this is the idea of this assessment framework. Juniors will have also the word, but as you can see, their weight index is 0.5, while the QA architect, the participant one, have 4. And again, we're applying the same strategy where we are multiplying the weight index to the rating that the person gave, and the actual case in, for example, for solution 1, participant 1, it's 20. And of course, we are getting the average based on these weighted indexes. Now, phase 7. I propose to do that. You can skip it if you want, but I believe it's a good one so that you can measure the time needed for the project. Is to first create an abstract test cases suite. Maybe if this is an older project, you already have test cases and everything. Why I'm saying abstract, maybe by abstract, I understand just the most basic information, like a really good title so that you can understand what is the real test case, what you need to do. Sometimes this is not enough, but I'm saying abstract, not a detailed case where you put which button you click, right? Then you need to set priorities and categories. And I usually put the test cases into 3 phases. The phase 1, we start with it. And when we automated all phase 1 test cases, or basically the most important with the highest priority, then we are heading to phase 2. Also, why we need these phases, because usually here at this point, we will want to have estimates for only phase 1 test cases. And also we will need estimates for the requirements, the so-called test automation requirements. What are these test automation requirements? Maybe you need a mock server and web pages fixture generation. In many cases, it's not only clicking through the UI, you need some kind of a test data web service with a few endpoints, like for creating test users, test purchases, somehow validating completed orders into the database or somewhere else, right? Maybe you need custom framework components for working with big test data tables. Maybe you need custom logic for validated PDF information or handling some weird Chrome extension. I'm talking from experience, right? Maybe you need logic for generating session cookies by username so that you can log in faster instead of going through the single sign-on process. Or like example from the last month, maybe you need some kind of a weird logic for bypassing captchas on the test environment. These are all valid things, and you will need all of them in many cases. So you need to have estimates for how much this will cost. And based on these estimations for the phase 1 and for this test automation prerequisites, you'll figure out whether you will make your final decision whether to use existing solution or develop yours, and which of the existing solutions that you evaluated. And you'll need to answer a few questions. Are you going to use the existing solution, again, based on the previous test strategy? How much time you will need to implement it? How much it will cost to maintain and support it? This is thing that many people miss, right? But again, if it's existing, it's how much do you need if it's an existing one, open source, if you want to get the updates, is it easy to, for example, if you clone the GitHub repo, how easy is to update it? Does it break many often? This is a case with open source solutions, because if you pay, you submit tickets and you believe that the company should fix it. But if you're working with free open source solution, you have to think about this. Do you have an easy way to learn it? Are there any trainings or existing documentations? Or are you going to develop yours? Again, how much it will cost? Your time is money. So if you need half a year or a few months, just multiply it by your salary, and you will see that sometimes it's much better to buy, for example, a license for 1 year for $100 or 1,000 even, compared to your salary, right? You will have enough work, implementing all of these prerequisites or writing the test. So don't worry, you will learn many things. But again, do you have the real expertise to do it? In many cases, while I'm consulting companies, I'm just saying it that they tried for 1 year or 2 years, and then they see that they cannot do it, or they have many tests, but they keep failing because they haven't thought about all of these things up front, and then they require outside help. And again, how much it will cost to you to support it over time and develop all the features instead of leveraging existing solution, no matter whether it's paid or open source. You'll have to, all of these questions and frameworks will help you to answer these questions, but they are essential. And again, some considerations and tips. Last few words, you can use this pragmatic information-based approach to evaluate not only test automation solutions and frameworks, but also other kinds of tools and systems. You can apply it for test case management system, bug tracking systems, and any type of technical solution. So I hope that it will help you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer you. See you soon and stay healthy.